While downtown gridlock's already a major headache in the city, streetcar track work on a southern stretch of Spadina promises to further snarl traffic starting in less than a couple of weeks. Good afternoon. There'll soon be even more traffic congestion downtown.
Later this month, buses will replace streetcar service between Spadina Station and Queens Quay. CTV's John Musselman is standing by live with the latest. John.
Well, Michelle, you already know how busy Spadina can be, but the streetcars here are usually in their own area. But now we're going to have to bring buses onto the streets. So you're right, more congestion. And we're also getting mixed feelings from some of the riders here. Some like it, some don't. Spadina is already one of the busiest and most congested north-south routes in the city, and now it will likely get worse. Streetcars that run up the middle in a designated space are being removed to complete track renewal work and modernize the overhead power supply. That means more buses will be added to the street for the rest of the year, but most people we talked to said they don't mind it.
I'd rather it get fixed. Plus, we're going to get the other additional platform at Spadina.
Streetcar, if it stops, the rest of the streetcars stop.
If anything, I'll just walk down to Osgood and take the subway.
I definitely think it's going to cause more traffic than we already have, which is problematic in Toronto, as anyone who lives in Toronto, drives or walks or takes public transport already knows.
This is work that's incredibly important for our infrastructure to make sure that it's kept in a state of good repair, doing any overhead and upgrades that we need to do. But importantly, there's also other work that's being done. Toronto Water has some work being done in the area. There's some cityscape work that's being done for public realm. So it's a coordinated effort.
Here's a breakdown for transit users. The 510 Spadina streetcar will be replaced with buses both ways on Spadina Avenue between Spadina Station and Queens Quay West. There will be no 510 Spadina streetcar service to or from Union Station. Customers traveling to or from Union Station can transfer between the replacement buses and the 509 Harbourfront streetcars at Queens Quay West. And the 509 Harbourfront streetcar service will be increased to and from Union Station. The TTC says there will be customer service reps at key transfer points to assist riders. The Transit Authority also says it mailed out more than 23,000 notices about this change. So keep in mind the timeline here is next week right up to December if everything goes according to plan. But if you are using Spadina in the next 6 months, expect delays. Reporting live, I'm John Musselman. I'll send back to you.
All right. Thank you, John. And Toronto police are investigating a stabbing on a TTC bus in the West End last night. It happened at around 6 o'clock at Park Lawn Road and Barrie Road. Police responded for reports of a stabbing during an argument. Paramedics tell us a male youth was taken to hospital with serious injuries and a woman suffered minor injuries. Police say the injured youth is also in custody. They're looking for a second male who fled the scene.
Detectives have released a photo of a suspect wanted in an assault, mischief, and uttering threats investigation. On Saturday, June 8th, police say 28-year-old Sufyan Chowdhury of Toronto went to the home of someone he knew near Broadview and Gerrard. The pair had an argument, and Chowdhury is accused of assaulting the victim. It's alleged he returned the following day, and a similar series of events unfolded. Police say if you spot the suspect, you should not approach. Instead, call 911 immediately.
Still ahead, it's crunch time for the Oilers. Edmonton is hoping home ice advantage will help them stage a comeback against the Panthers in Game 3 tonight. We'll have more on the anticipation ahead of tonight's game coming up a little later in the show.
But first, let's take a look outside this hour. Some sunshine early this afternoon before things are expected to get active. You'll also notice it is a lot warmer than it was the past few days. Jessica Smith is here with a look at the current conditions. Any rain this hour, or are we in the clear for now?
We're okay for now here in the GTA and throughout the downtown core, but things are expected to change later on this afternoon and evening. All this heat and humidity in an incoming cold front are the perfect pairing for some severe weather as we head into that second half of our day. Right now, the bulk of the shower activity is in towards areas through Owen Sound and Huntsville. We are under a tornado watch for a good portion of southern Ontario. Toronto, the GTA, we're not under it just yet, but it doesn't mean that can't change very quickly. The areas in yellow, those are severe thunderstorm watches. First you watch and then you warn. So we have conditions favorable. That's why it's such a widespread watch area. Temperature-wise, it is really hot outside. We're sitting at 27 already, feeling like 32. We're looking at it, feeling like 29 through Niagara. It feels like 30 through Windsor, and out through Ottawa, feeling like 28. With all this heat, so you have warmer air at the surface, cooler air aloft with that cold front coming and quite literally slicing through all that heat and a pretty gusty wind. All those things together, you put them in that recipe bowl and it creates a thunderstorm sandwich, I guess. Temperature-wise, it is going to be hot throughout the next couple of days. Coming up, your full forecast right now. Back over to Michelle and Nathan.
Thank you, Jess. The city's Planning and Housing Committee is meeting today, pushing forward a renovictions bylaw that's been under construction for several years.
It would aim to keep property owners from removing tenants in bad faith, evicting them in the name of repairs, with the goal of earning higher rent.
It would be impossible, and it has been impossible, for the city to build affordable housing as fast as tenants are being renovicted from affordable housing.
As it stands, there is nothing in place to confirm that landlords are actually doing the renovations they say they're going to do, and there's no way to ensure that tenants are being offered their legal right to move back in when those renovations are done. The onus is entirely on the tenant who has recently just been displaced from their home, to catch a landlord doing this in bad faith. Toronto is facing a housing crisis, and failure to act today will only make it worse.
The proposed rules would mirror a system now in place in Hamilton. They'd require landlords to show proof they need to carry out extensive renovations that require tenants to leave. They would also have to secure a permit from the city. If approved by committee, the plan would go to full city council next week.
The cost of renting a one-bedroom apartment was up 5.1% across Canada in May compared to a year earlier. That's according to a new listings analysis from real estate company Zumper. Toronto remained the second priciest city, but actually saw a year-over-year decline in asking rents for a one-bedroom unit. That was around $2,500, down 0.8%. And for a two-bedroom, it was around $3,100, down more than 2%.
In the push to fix the city's housing crisis and build more multi-unit residential buildings, it seems one important feature is getting left by the wayside.
Now, a group of Toronto councillors is calling for the rules surrounding the minimum number of visitor parking spots at new developments to be addressed. CTV's Natalie Johnson explains.
This is going to be a 35-story building.
In the Parkway Forest pocket of North York, these townhomes are under application to be torn down. A 35-story residential tower is set to be built in their place, according to the local councillor. More than 300 units, but only 5 visitor parking spots. While at the adjacent building, those visitor spots are also full, with no room for service vehicles, deliveries.
Very, very difficult. Most of the time, we get a ticket.
Or simply visitors.
My friends came here. They don't have any visitor parking to park anywhere, so they will go to the Fairview Mall and they will park their car and they'll come here.
Meanwhile, at Bayview and Shepherd, this gas station is set to be redeveloped as a 44-story tower. Only 7 visitor parking spots were proposed. Councillor Lily Chang negotiated 7 more.
Development applications keep right on coming in, and they're all going for the least possible amounts.
A group of suburban Toronto councillors is now calling for a second look at the rules that govern how few visitor spots residential developments can get away with.
We actually sounded the alarm back when the parking zoning bylaw changed a couple of years back, and we've been asking for it to be looked at, but now we're actually seeing the applications that, according to that new bylaw, bring entirely too few parking spots, and in particular visitor parking spots.
Arguing there are far fewer parking options in North York, Scarborough and Etobicoke compared to downtown when it comes to paid lots or street parking. Further complicating the push for parking is Provincial Bill 185, which is designed to incentivize the construction of more homes during a housing crisis. The legislation limits the abilities of city to require certain numbers of parking spots in residential developments.
Fewer and fewer people need residential parking spots. What is distinctly different is the need for visitor parking up here. That we're still going to need.
Calling on Toronto's top planner to come up with both a strategy and a solution for the suburbs.
We'll wait for the staff to come up with some very scientific-based recommendation.
Welcome news for any non-tenant stuck parking illegally, because there are too few spots for all the drivers and deliveries.
Very hard. There is no parking here. It's always park on the fire road, and sometimes we get a ticket here too.
As City Hall sets out to revisit visitor parking. Natalie Johnson, CTV News.
A rash of suspected overdoses in the area of Dufferin and Eglinton has Toronto police issuing a warning about potentially harmful street drugs.
Police say they don't know what specific drug led to the deaths, and more of the drug may still be out on the streets. CTV's Beth McDonnell is live in the area and brings us the details. A lot of concern around there, Beth.
For sure, Nathan. Police responded to 4 calls between Sunday and Tuesday here in the Dufferin and Eglinton area, 4 overdoses, and 3 of those overdoses were fatal. The 4 overdoses took place in the Dufferin and Eglinton area and involve a suspicious drug. Toronto police are warning people who use drugs there could be more of this drug being sold or given to people. Here's what we do know. 3 of the 4 people died from ingesting an unknown drug. The drug is suspected to be an opioid. And since the drug was consumed before police arrived, there is no description of it.
The number of deaths and overdose deaths has not been slowing down in the city of Toronto, and perhaps the division in that area wanted people to be alert, although Dufferin and Eglinton is a neighborhood that historically has had a number of overdoses and overdose deaths.
Zoe Dodd, co-organizer of the Toronto Overdose Prevention Society, says the drug supply is very toxic, especially when it comes to fentanyl. Geography can play a role in the illegal supply.
It could be the batch that's there. It could also be the fact that that neighborhood in particular doesn't have a lot of services. There isn't a supervised consumption site for anyone to go to. There isn't drug checking in that neighborhood. So everything for drugs, that kind of the overdose prevention sites, the supervised consumption sites, that's all very centrally located.
Police say anyone using drugs should use extreme caution and not use them alone. Toronto Public Health is urging anyone who uses drugs to make sure they keep a naloxone kit on hand. It has the ability to reverse an opioid overdose and also to have their drugs checked with the Toronto Drug Checking Service to know what's in these drugs. Reporting live, I'm Beth McDonnell. Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, Beth. It's been a whirlwind week for the newly appointed Minister of Energy and Electrification, Stephen Lecce.
Lecce was in Darlington today to announce the completion of the first phase of site preparation for Ontario's first small modular reactor. CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris is in Darlington and brings us the details of this story. Siobhan.
Well, Nathan, there has been a lot for Stephen Lecce to catch up on. A week ago, this time, he was still the Minister of Education. Then suddenly he was on a flight to Romania to finalize a deal there to hire Ontario workers for a nuclear refurbishment in that country. Back on home soil, he's talking up a major milestone for energy in Ontario. The first phase of the small modular reactor project here at Darlington is now complete. Once it's operational sometime in the mid-2030s, this project will be able to generate enough power for 1.2 million homes. Lecce says moving forward, all options are on the table when it comes to amping up Ontario's energy supply, whether that be wind turbines, more electric power stations to power electric vehicles. What I asked him, though, is about the more immediate term, with forecasters saying we're in for a hotter than usual summer.
We're confident to have reliable and affordable and clean energy for families this summer. We are absolutely confident in our ability to deliver that for the people of Ontario without imposing higher taxes, as recommended by some of the parties opposite. But look, we obviously support conservation. We made a series of investments to help families in their homes, upgrade homes and windows. Conservation efforts are being led through various utilities, and we support them.
The independent electricity systems operator has warned that Ontario may need to tap into energy supply from some neighboring jurisdictions over the next 2 summers if we have some severe weather. Reporting live, I'm Siobhan Morris. Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, Siobhan. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is in Italy as the G7 summit kicks off.
World leaders are expected to finalize a deal to use frozen Russian assets to help fund Ukraine's war effort. CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver has the details.
Well, look at the agenda for today, and that gives you a pretty good idea of what host Italy deems the most important. A working session on Africa, development and climate change, one on the Middle East, and 2 working sessions on Ukraine. The Prime Minister will participate in all of those summit meetings, but he will also hold private bilateral meetings with the leaders of Germany, France, and Ukraine. He could also meet with the Pope later in the summit. Pope Francis will be here tomorrow to talk about artificial intelligence. This will be the first G7 visit from a pontiff. The big story storyline today, though, a deal to use Russian frozen assets to help finance the war in Ukraine. The U.S. president proposed to give Ukraine a $50 billion loan, backed by the interest generated on nearly $300 billion worth of frozen Russian assets sitting in financial institutions. And that's supposedly been agreed to by the G7 leaders. A formal announcement could come down later today when the U.S. President Joe Biden meets with the Ukrainian president. Sources say Canada will contribute $5 billion to this G7-supported plan. Since February 2022, when the G7 first started freezing assets, more than $140 million worth of Russian assets have been frozen in Canada. Annie Bergeron-Oliver, CTV News, Bari, Italy.
Meanwhile, Canada is going to ship decommissioned rocket motors to Ukraine. Defense Minister Bill Blair made the announcement today in Brussels.
Canada will provide Ukraine with 2,300 Canadian Rocket Vehicle 7s, or CRV rocket motors. And this equipment was formerly used by the Royal Canadian Air Force on our CF-18 aircraft. And over the past several months, we've been testing these rockets to ensure their viability, following a request from the Armed Forces of Ukraine for this equipment.
The minister is attending a meeting of the Ukraine Defense Contract Group. It includes about 50 allied countries led by the United States. The plan is to begin shipping the motors in the coming weeks. Canada will send more rocket motors to Ukraine once testing of an additional 80,000 of them are completed. 29 surplus remote weapon systems and more than 130,000 rounds of surplus small arms ammunition are also being provided.
More torrential rain fell on already waterlogged South Florida today. At least a foot of rain drenched an area from the Gulf Coast into Miami. The National Weather Service issued flood watches or warnings for 8 million people. A state of emergency has been declared for 5 South Florida counties. Officials say some areas are seeing life-threatening flooding. The slow-moving tropical depression is expected to linger over the state until early Saturday before moving out to sea.
In Saudi Arabia, pilgrims continue to prepare for the official start of the Hajj. They're circling the Kaaba, Mecca, Islam's holiest site. The area around the Grand Mosque was crowded a day before pilgrims head to the nearby desert area of Mina to officially open the pilgrimage. Saudi authorities say that more than 1.5 million people have arrived in the country as of Tuesday, and more are expected. Hundreds of thousands of Saudis and others living there will join them when the pilgrimage officially begins Friday. The Hajj is one of the 5 pillars of Islam.
Mississauga's brand new mayor says she's not waiting to be sworn in before getting down to work.
Carolyn Parrish is a familiar face at Mississauga City Hall as a longtime councillor. Now she will lead the city after winning Monday's mayoral by-election. CTV Sean Leithong has the details.
This is a very hard city hall to navigate.
12 days before she officially becomes mayor of Mississauga, Carolyn Parrish is eager to set her agenda.
I'm not going to wait till the 24th. I'm ready to go.
Speaking with CTV News, Parrish says she has firm priorities for the immediate future of the city.
Item number 1 is housing. And I've already spoken to the commissioner, and he's pulling together what he considers who he considers the best developers and builders that build in Mississauga. We're putting a task force together. We're going to start the day after I'm sworn in.
Saying the city's built to its limits, so the task will be rezoning for rental and affordable housing, pointing to over 160 acres along the new LRT line currently zoned for office, and plans for the Heartland Town Center that would see more high-rises to help address the housing shortage. And she won't shy away in getting the job done.
The strong mayor powers are really good for housing. It's the only time I'd use them.
A former councillor and Liberal MP during the Chrétien years, Parrish won Monday's Mississauga by-election by a comfortable margin despite a crowded field. She's known for having a take-charge and off-the-cuff style, as evident during her election night speech.
We will prioritize sustainable development. I'm not going to read all this. As you all know, I can be quite charming. And you also know I can be quite forceful. Well, I was telling the truth. I can be very forceful. If you look at my history, I've stood up to a few bullies in my life. Deep down inside, I am fairly charming, and I like to be liked. I'm not one of those people that likes to push people around. I like people to come along with me.
During her campaign, Parrish decided not to participate in several debates after she was accused of making controversial remarks early on, something the mayor-elect talked about.
And I thought, why am I doing this? They had about 20, maybe 20 of them set up. And every night that they were doing those debates, I was meeting 80 to 300 people in groups. And that's who I needed to meet, and that's who I wanted to meet.
Her strategy proving successful. Today, she's working out of her old council office for Ward 5.
I need that report from Metamorphosis today.
In a departure from predecessor Bonnie Crombie, Parrish says Mississauga is better off as part of Peel Region. Looking for a new deal from the province, she's already spoken to Premier Ford.
And he was very receptive to some of the points that I've been working on in my campaign. So I can't wait to get downtown and meet him with the other two mayors from the region and push that ahead. Those are two big issues with me.
Parrish cites a recent report which says Peel social services are being shorted over $860 million per year, so a strong relationship with Queen's Park would be beneficial. She says she hopes to point towards her work in housing and social services and that her mix of charm and force will produce a collaborative approach.
You learn a lot by listening to other people. I used to be a high school teacher, and when you would have one of the kids do a presentation, and the conversation that ensued, the kids learned more from each other than they ever learned from the person standing at the front of the room. You just had to facilitate it.
Shantley Thong, CTV News.
In the world of sports, the Edmonton Oilers are hoping for some home ice magic tonight for Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final.
You're the home team. Your job is to go and win 2 games, and they did that. So now we're the home team, and we get the next 2 at home, which is fantastic. And just got to protect home ice. It's going to be an incredible atmosphere.
This is the Oilers' first home game in a Stanley Cup Final in 18 years. They lost the first 2 games in Florida, but there's optimism about a comeback. The Oilers were on the brink of elimination twice against the Vancouver Canucks. As for the lineup, Darnell Nurse is due to play tonight. He was injured in the first period of Game 2.
And CTV's Tony Grace has more on the anticipation ahead of tonight's game. Tony, let's start with the significance of tonight's game for the Oilers. How big is this game?
Well, Nathan, let's put it this way. The last time a team came back from a 3-0 deficit, and that's what Edmonton would find itself in if they lose tonight. The last time a team came back from a 3-0 deficit and went on to win the Cup, that was the Toronto Maple Leafs, and that was back in 1942. So we're kind of talking about ancient history there, but this is the here and now. They're down 2 games to none. If they win tonight, the lead of Florida is cut in half, and then if they win on Saturday night, it's a whole new series. It's essentially a best of 3. So yes, the pressure is on coming off that Game 2 loss on Monday night, and the players know it. You could really hear the tension in their voices, and you could sort of see it on their faces on Monday night in those clips after the game. Fast forward to yesterday, that clip you just saw from Zach Hyman, a smile on his face, the team ready to try and will their way back into this series. And actually, we heard from Edmonton's coach and a couple of the players just in the last hour as they were really updating us on where they were at in their headspace heading into tonight's game. Have a listen.
Yeah, I think it's going to be special, but we got to give them a reason to be special, right? We have to come out and put our game in order and find our game early and just be better, really, than last night. So excited to be back at home in front of our fans.
Like I said, after Game 2, we had plenty of opportunities to score and, 3 goal posts. If those go in, it's a different game. And it's we're talking about how good the power play is rather than is it struggling. So, there's things that we can do better. They're doing some good things that are making it difficult for us.
So having the physical advantage, that's one thing the Oilers know they need to have in order to win this game. The home ice advantage, of course, the energy of all of those fans inside and outside the arena in Edmonton, that electric atmosphere that we have seen, frankly, right through this postseason run. They'll be feeding off that and off of the fan support they know they have in areas right across Canada. For example, just north of us in Newmarket tonight, in the public square there, a gathering to watch because it's a Connor McDavid watch party, because Connor McDavid, the Edmonton captain, his hockey roots are right here in the GTA in York region. So it's going to be felt across the country. And I'll leave you with this, Nathan and Michelle. Perhaps one thing is the psychological advantage as well that people discuss. The Oilers have been sitting in Edmonton. Well, they haven't been sitting around, but they've been back in Edmonton now for 2 days because after Game 2 on Monday night, they flew back Tuesday morning. The Panthers, on the other hand, only touched down in Edmonton late last night because their flight was delayed for multiple hours because of storms in Florida. So Edmonton's been sitting around waiting for their opponent. Florida just touching down last night and hitting the ice today. I guess we'll see if psychological advantage plays a role tonight when that puck drops, Nathan.
Yeah, just might. CTV's Tony Grace, thank you.
You bet.
We are looking at an active weather afternoon and evening, and we have tornado watches in place. First you watch and then you warn. You watch when you have conditions favorable, the warnings, or when it is imminent or there's evidence on the radar. So we will keep a close eye on that to help keep everybody safe. Coming up, I'll have a full look at your long-range forecast, including how long this messy weather is sticking around, what we can expect as we step in towards the weekend. We'll have those details coming up after the break.
Well, the sky really has clouded over the noon hour, and we are anticipating some potentially stormy weather. How bad it gets depends on where you are.
Yeah, I think for sure all eyes on the skies, and I'm wondering, my son's got football practice. It starts at 6:30. Will they be good till 8:30? Because that's roughly the time when all this is going to come in.
Probably the tail end of that practice is when a lot of this comes in for the GTA. Because it is so hot, the chance of showers really lingers. So I had someone ask me early on today, they're like, well, it says it's going to rain all day. I said, well, the chance of rain is going to be there all day, but the better likelihood of the active weather is this evening. So keep that in mind if you have any outdoor plans, practices. I know we're getting into that kind of time of year. You want to plan accordingly. Anytime there are tornado watches, warnings, severe thunderstorms, watches and warnings, you really have to take into account your plan to get out of the active weather. The good news is, as we step in towards the next couple of days, that pushes out, and then we settle into a bit of a heat wave heading in towards next week. Weather is brought to you by the Presler Law Firm. Injury lawyers you don't pay unless they win. It is noticeably warmer outside today. We are looking to kind of hold on to this heat as we head throughout the afternoon. And as a cold front sweeps its way through, that's where things really start to change. Taking a look at our temperature map, it is warm right now, but as we settle into the next few days, it is going to get hot. So we see these oranges, these reds. When you see those deep reds really start to push in, and that settles in towards next week, that's when you know it is going to be extremely warm. For now, we're sitting at 28. We're feeling like 33, and we have a kind of a west-southwesterly wind that's a little breezy right now. We're at 27 through Windsor, 21 in Kingston. Northern Ontario is still holding on to some warmth, but we are starting to see the cooler air with that cold front push its way down. We're looking right across the board at 4 to 5 degrees above seasonal today, but it's the humidex values that are getting into that mid-30 range. Tonight, it stays warm as well. We sit at 18. The stormy weather, the timing of it really is through the late afternoon, early evening for the GTA, and then it carries through to about midnight, and then it's gone. The bulk of the shower activity right now is still kind of building and pushing its way in, but along that cold front, that's where the bulk of this really kind of pushes through southern Ontario. It slices through all of that hot air that we are building up throughout the day, and that is where the likelihood for severe weather comes in. Timing everything out. Again, throughout the majority of our day, we are dry and relatively comfortable, minus all that heat and humidity. In towards about 4 o'clock is when the bulk of kind of the chance of showers really settles in. The heavier rain, that line of showers along Owen Sound towards Huntsville, that's when it comes in around 7 p.m. For the GTA, the downtown core, we kind of get through a good portion of our evening. It really isn't until 8 to about 9 p.m. where you're looking at the likelihood of it really being severe for us. Then that pushes out, and as we approach midnight, the bulk of it is gone. So these systems are fast and furious. And then as we get into our Friday morning, the chance of active weather is going to linger, but we're really looking at a beautiful day as we head in towards the afternoon. And then we're holding on to that sunshine as we step in towards the weekend. Temperature wise, very hot today. We get a little relief into the day tomorrow after that cold front passes through. We hold on to a beautiful, very seasonal forecast for Saturday, for Father's Day, for your dad, the father figure in your life. Beautiful outside. If you want to barbecue and golf, spend some time outdoors. And then into next week, right now, into the 30s, we are into heat warning criteria when you look at these numbers. We'll keep a close eye on that after the weekend, but regardless, the humidex values into next week into the 40s. So something to note as we head in towards the bulk of the summer season. Michelle, I'll send things back to you.
Thank you, Jess. The Boston Celtics are on the brink of an NBA record 18th championship.
Brown goes up top to Tatum. Tatum lines up, three-pointer's good.
Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown combined for 61 points to lead Boston to a 106-99 victory over the Mavericks in Game 3 of the NBA Finals. Boston has won 7 straight playoff games on the road, 10 overall. None of the previous 156 teams to face a 3-0 deficit has rallied to win an NBA playoff series. The Celtics can wrap it up in Game 4 tomorrow night.
And the Toronto Raptors were the first franchise outside of the U.S. to win the NBA championship, and that historic moment happened 5 years ago tonight. The city erupted in jubilation after the Raptors knocked off the Golden State Warriors in Game 6 of the finals. Toronto captured the title after an impressive playoff run, with big plays from Kawhi Leonard, who was named Finals MVP. The celebration downtown continued into the early hours of the morning. Who can forget?
We all remember. That was so much fun. The Blue Jays were looking to win their series against Milwaukee yesterday afternoon. Toronto was down by 4, but fought back to load the bases in the 9th.
Can Kirk keep it going? Center field and well hit. On the track, it is caught.
Alejandro Kirk's sac fly made it a 1-run game, but the Jays would not get any more. The Brewers went on to win 5-4. Toronto hosts Cleveland tomorrow night.
And before the game, the Jays confirmed they traded Cavan Biggio. The versatile 29-year-old is heading west after Toronto designated him for assignment on Friday. He's joining the NL West leading Los Angeles Dodgers. In return, the Jays get minor league pitcher Braden Fisher. Biggio spent 6 seasons with Toronto.
Still ahead on CTV News at noon, a new option to treat chronic migraines gets the green light. We'll have more after the break.
Removing tonsils is a common surgery. Typically, the patient can go home the same day. But CTV News spoke with 2 Ontario parents who say the simple surgery came with scary complications for their kids.
Both had their procedures done at a Hamilton hospital where 2 other children died after getting their tonsils out. CTV's Heather Wright has the story.
Everything seemed fine following Rosie List's tonsillectomy surgery last month. Until it wasn't.
She threw up blood, like just suddenly all over the living room floor.
Sarah Liz says she drove her 8-year-old daughter back to McMaster Children's Hospital where she was readmitted.
As the day went on, she got sicker.
Liz says doctors initially didn't know what was wrong. She says she was told it was likely unrelated to the surgery. But then Rosie developed redness on her neck near where her tonsils had been removed. A CT scan showed an abscess and she was booked for emergency surgery.
She had the infection in her bloodstream, and I didn't really fully understand until later, I think, that it was sepsis.
Following surgery, Rosie was placed on a ventilator. She would need another surgery and a feeding tube. After 18 days, she was discharged.
It's just so shocking, thinking it's an isolated experience and it's so incredibly rare. They don't get complications like this, Most tonsillectomies don't have any complications and it's fine. And then finding out that 2 kids died.
Last week, McMaster Children's Hospital announced a pause to all scheduled tonsil and adenoid surgeries following the deaths of 2 children after they had undergone the procedures. An external investigation is also underway. The hospital says there's no evidence these 2 cases are related and no causes of death have been released.
I don't know where things went wrong.
Landy Stat's 7-year-old daughter Jade also experienced complications following tonsil surgery at McMaster Children's Hospital in April.
15 doctors had to surround her bed because her skin started going really blotchy and her vitals were dropping. Her heartbeat reached 200 beats per minute.
Jade spent 6 days in the hospital recovering. Her mom says she still doesn't know what caused those complications.
Both parents say they want their child's case to be included in the external investigation. While McMaster Children's Hospital would not provide any more information due to patient privacy, they said in a statement that the review will be comprehensive. Heather Wright, CTV News, Toronto.
In Canada, more than 2.7 million people suffer from debilitating migraines.
Now, a medication previously given for episodic migraines has been approved for chronic migraines. Health reporter Pauline Chan has the details.
Shruti Shivaramakrishnan has been suffering from migraines since she was just 6.
Symptoms were very confusing, and I found it really hard to articulate because it felt like my tummy was expanding, contracting, lights were too bright, I couldn't stand, I wanted to throw up, it was very hard. But the headaches came later on, and I was diagnosed when I was 13.
It affected her schooling, her social life, her family, and her career.
It feels like my head is imploding and exploding at the same time, if that makes sense. But also the light feels like daggers sound feels like someone's just attacking me.
And while a couple of medications help for short periods, she's still looking for a medication or therapy that offers more lasting relief.
Migraine is one of the most common conditions that exists, and by most estimates, we think about 12 to 18% of all Canadians have active migraine, but that doesn't account for the people who have what we might call inactive migraine.
Migraine specialist Dr. William Kingston says it's believed to have genetic causes triggered by situations within or outside the body.
So if someone is under more stress or has an exposure to a trigger, some people may attribute weather changes as a trigger for migraine.
A new drug known as Qulipta has just been made available in Canada for chronic migraines.
The generic name would be atogepant. So it is a specific migraine targeted treatment that's been available in Canada to some degree for about a year, but now we have it available for what we call chronic migraines, so people who have 15 or more headache days per month.
It prevents migraines by blocking certain receptors. Shruti is looking to try the new drug.
I just want something to work for me so I can be functional. I want to be a mom. I want to work. I want to be able to play with my daughter.
Pauline Chan, CTV News.
With the official start of summer just a week away, Toronto Public Health is urging residents to take precautions against West Nile virus. West Nile is an illness transmitted through the bite of an infected mosquito that can cause fever, nausea, and a range of other symptoms. It can pose a risk to older people and those with weakened immune systems. Last year, officials say there were 23 confirmed human cases of the disease in this city. They're advising avoiding mosquito bites by wearing light-colored clothing, covering up outdoors, especially during dusk and dawn, wearing insect repellent, and removing standing water from properties.
New figures show more than 400 patients have been forced into nursing homes, not of their choosing, since that became legal in this province. In 2022, the Ford government passed legislation aimed at opening up hospital space. One provision okayed the transfer of patients who no longer needed hospital-level care, but hadn't found a space in a long-term care home. Those individuals can be sent to nursing homes not of their choosing, up to 70 kilometers away in southern Ontario. Numbers obtained by the Canadian Press show 424 patients have been discharged in that way to date, and at an increasing rate in recent months. Hospitals can charge patients $400 a day if they flat out refuse to move. The Ministry of Health says 7 people have faced those fees. At least one family has refused to pay.
If you spend several hours a day on the couch watching TV, a new study says you're likely harming your chances of aging in a healthy way. U.S. researchers analyzed data on more than 45,000 people aged 50 plus in 1992. 20 years later, their health was compared with their sitting habits at work, at home, and specifically watching television. Each additional 2 hours of sitting to watch TV was associated with a 12% decrease in living to age 70 without major chronic disease, memory impairments, or physical or mental health issues. Experts say combining or even replacing just an hour of TV time with light exercise can have real benefits.
More than 5 years after the Game of Thrones series finale, stocks were mixed in early trading. We've got more details coming up after the break.
Toronto's top stories, breaking news alerts, and watch live. Download the CTV News app.
U.S. stocks hit a new record high today, signaling that inflation is easing.
But Toronto shares slipped. BNN Bloomberg's Andrew Bell has more.
Hello there. Here are your business headlines. Stocks were mixed in early trading today, with weaker oil shares dragging down Toronto. But the tech-focused NASDAQ index hit a new record high. It was a fresh sign that U.S. inflation is slowing. So-called producer prices unexpectedly dropped in May by the most in 7 months, mostly due to lower gasoline costs. Shares in National Bank of Canada slipped again in morning trading as investors question how long it will take to actually reap benefits from that richly priced takeover of Canadian Western Bank. Canadian Western shares have been trading at a hefty discount below the value of the bid on paper, partly because of the long path to regulatory approval. And finally, Bloomberg says U.S. bank Wells Fargo fired more than a dozen employees after investigating claims that they were faking work using, quote, simulation of keyboard activity. Devices and software to fake work, sometimes known as mouse movers or mouse jigglers, took off during the pandemic work from home era. It's unclear if the employees that Wells Fargo fired were allegedly faking active work from home. That's the latest in business. I'm Andrew Bell of BNN Bloomberg.
Almost 6 million people in Ontario play the lottery on a regular basis, all hoping for a chance to hit the jackpot.
And if you play, you already know you should sign your name on a ticket, but you should also remember exactly where you bought it from. CTV's Pat Foran explains.
Right now, I cannot get the money.
Rirong Cho of Markham bought a 649 lottery ticket in April of 2023, but he only realized months later that he had a winner. He won almost $1,200 and submitted a claim with OLG to collect his prize last October, but has yet to receive it.
I try email to them so many times and call them so many times. But he said, and then he said, it's on the way, but no one sent to me. No one sent the check to me.
Cho's friend, Rala Chin, has been trying to help him collect his prize.
It said that if you win over 1,000, you should get your check in the mail 6 to 8 weeks. But right now it's over 1 year.
Chin says the main problem is that OLG wants to know where Cho bought the winning ticket, and he can't remember.
OLG is asking him what location you bought it when it's months ago.
OLG says its main priority is making sure the right prize goes to the rightful owner of the winning ticket, but you should know if you win the lottery, you'll have to answer some questions. OLG said in a statement, when a winning ticket of $1,000 or more is presented for claim, the OLG Prize Center is required to determine the rightful ownership of that ticket. When claiming a prize, you may be asked, where did you purchase the ticket? When did you purchase the ticket? And did you purchase other lottery products such as Encore or another game at the same time?
Why is it taking so long when you have a senior specialist working on this?
After CTV News got in touch with OLG, they took another look at Cho's case. He's been informed his check has been processed and will be sent to him shortly in the mail, which was good news for him.
And that was CTV's Pat Foran. Now, more than 5 years after the Game of Thrones series finale, another prequel show is set to become a reality.
A Targaryen who sits the Iron Throne is not just a king or a queen.
HBO's House of the Dragon is also set in the same world as Game of Thrones, although its events take place a few hundred years earlier. Now, series author George R.R. Martin confirms work is being done on a separate saga set 1,000 years in the past. HBO previously said it would commission 5 prequel concepts, but it's not clear if that still is the plan. Season 2 of House of the Dragon debuts Sunday.
While most seasons of our fair marriage mart follow a predictable pattern,
it's an exciting day for fans waiting for the latest installment of Bridgerton. Part 2 of Season 3 is now out after Netflix released a sneak preview earlier in the week. Figures after the release of Part 1 showed all 3 seasons of Bridgerton dominating the streaming charts. Showrunner Jess Brownell told The Hollywood Reporter Season 4 won't come for another 2 years.
Well, it happened again. Swifties attending the singer's world tour of dance so hard they caused earthquake readings kilometers away.
Welcome to the Eras Tour.
Swift just wrapped up 3 nights in Edinburgh. The British Geological Survey says its earthquake monitoring station 6 kilometers away picked up seismic activity. It was similar to what was previously seen at shows in the U.S. The activity was strongest during her songs Ready for It, Cruel Summer, and Champagne Problems. The Eras Tour comes to Toronto in November. And coming up, a green burger symbol will soon join the lights of Yonge Dundas Square in Toronto as Canada's first Shake Shack location officially opens today. More on that after the break.
A popular U.S. burger chain officially made its Canadian debut this morning at Yonge Dundas.
1, 2, 3, cut all the way through.
The chain opened in New York in 2004, Shake Shack that is, gaining fans of its smash burgers, crinkle-cut fries, and shakes. But Shake Shack has outlined a few Canadian-specific offerings on its menu, including the maple salted pretzel shake and the I Heart Buttered Tart Concrete, their word for custard. The chain plans to open 35 locations in this country over the next decade. And
the burger is good. What about that?
you've tried them.
Yeah, I like them. This was in Florida, so I hope it's the same. You never know when they come here.
Yeah.
It's not always the same thing.
I don't know. I've ever not liked a burger.
Right?
It's hard to do these stories at this point in the day because we're starving, because it's lunchtime.
All I'm thinking about is lunch and tornado watches. That's kind of my day today. But we are still looking at severe weather, so a great day to stay inside maybe or this evening and eat your burger and watch the storm from inside. We are still under a tornado watch for a good portion of southern Ontario. The GTA, the downtown core, we are not under one just yet, but it can change very quickly. The difference between, again, a watch and a warning: a watch, we have the right ingredients. The warning, it is imminent or taking place. So you should seek shelter immediately. We'll keep you guys updated all day, but for now, we're just holding on to all of the warmth.
And that is CTV News at noon. You can get Toronto's breaking news all day long and at our website, ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Jessica Smith and all of us, have a great day. I'm Nathan Downer.
And I'm Shelby Bay. Be sure to join us later for CTV News at 5 and 6.